But British Prime Minister Boris Johnson has admitted the West was too slow to act over Russian aggression in Ukraine and said we cannot make the same mistake again. He became the first world leader to address Kyiv's parliament today, echoing the words of Winston Churchill. The Prime Minister urged the country to keep resisting Russian invaders.
The so-called irresistible force of Putin's war machine has broken on the immovable object of Ukrainian patriotism and love of country. This is Ukraine's finest hour.
Well, joining me now is renowned Putin critic and former world chess champion, Garry Kasparov. Garry, thank you so much for joining me. I really appreciate it. I'll be following your Twitter feed absolutely assiduously now for the last 2 months. I think you've been calling every part of this so accurately. What is your current reading of what is happening in Ukraine? What do you think Putin wants to achieve, and what should we in the West be doing more?
Thank you for having me again. I think we should separate two things. One is humanitarian catastrophe, atrocities, never-ending atrocities, never-ending Russian attacks against civilians, demolition of the country. That's all bad news, and we all share responsibility for inaction. For so many years, ignoring the fact that for Putin, attack on Ukraine was not a matter of if, but when. On the other side, we could see that Ukrainian army that successfully repelled Putin's attacks at the first stage of the war and now is defending the East is about to become strong enough to counterattack. And I think that with all the support coming from the West, from all civilized nations, helping Ukraine to rearm and also helping them just to feed people and to support the army in any way possible. So with this support, Ukraine will win the war and will liberate the entire country. Ukraine will be whole and free, Crimea included. And the way I see it, that the liberation of Crimea and Ukrainian flag raised in Sevastopol, they will be the beginning of liberation of my country, Russia, from Putin's fascism.
Putin has been...
And as for the free world...
Well, I was going to say that Putin's been repeatedly sabre-rattling, threatening to deploy Russia's nuclear arsenal. Do you think he's got any intention of actually doing that? Would he want to trigger World War III in that sense with nuclear exchanges with the West?
I think he's bluffing. It's not just his own decision. He needs enough support among rank and files of Russian military. And I doubt very much that there are many kamikaze, if any kamikaze at all, because they all understand, using even tactical nuclear weapons will not terrorize the West, will not put Western governments in panic, but it will invite an adequate response. And I think the whole idea of this nuclear bluff was to frighten Britain, Europe, America, and prevent them from supporting Ukraine. It didn't work out. And I think all the sabre-rattling you hear now, it's a desperation, it's panic. And listening to Russian propaganda machine, I think they can feel that the end is near and Ukrainian army is about to start not just, holding the ground, but liberating their country. And we all know from history that the military defeat of dictatorship, it's always the end of the dictator.
Well, yes, and I absolutely hope that what you're reading of this is correct and turns out to be the case. It would be great to think that would happen. For you personally, you're one of the most famous people in Russian modern history. You were the greatest chess player. I'm a big chess fan. And you were by far the greatest, most successful chess player that there's ever been, really, in the world. You had to leave Russia, a place that reveres sports heroes like yourself, chess heroes. Do you yearn to go back in a post-Putin Russia? Would you like to go home?
I think it's my duty, because Russia will need a lot of work to do to return to the family of civilized nations. We have to go through the process of exoneration, same as Germany did 80 years ago. And I think every person like myself will be very helpful. I believe that I can do a lot to help rebuilding my country and making it part of the global solution and no more permanent problem.
And when you see, Garry, the furore about Wimbledon tennis at the moment, banning Russian and Belarusian players from competing at Wimbledon, do you agree with the targeting of Russian individuals in sport and culture and so on, or do you think that that's a misstep?
It's a tough question because, as you said, I'm one of the most decorated Soviet or Russian athletes in history. But at the same time, I understand the emotions, not just Ukrainians, but of all other players by seeing Russians taking part in these competitions. As a compromise, I can offer only one solution. Any Russian player who is invited and wants to take part in Wimbledon or any other competition, whether it's chess or tennis or elsewhere, must sign a declaration condemning criminal Putin regime and this horrible war. That's the only condition that could open doors for them. If they're willing to do it, taking risk, then I would argue that they should be allowed to play, but not under the current Russian flag, which is the flag that has been used to carry the war in Ukraine, and the flag that's being carried by the army are responsible for war crimes on an industrial scale. Well, so Garry, under the neutral flag of the international organization or whatever.
I'm going to leave it there, Garry. Fascinating to talk to you. I do follow your tweets very closely. I think you've been calling this superbly well throughout this conflict, and I hope that your reading of it is correct and that Ukraine ultimately prevailed. Thank you very much indeed. I appreciate you joining the show.
Thank you. And glory to Ukraine. Thank you.
Absolutely.